What do you sew when you want to spend your summer like this, but you also want to spend your summer like this? If you're as ridiculous as me, you combine this with this and hope for the best. I stumbled across this gorgeous block print cotton fabric in a local shop and immediately wanted to make a light, floaty, comfy summer dress from it. But first, I had to make a pattern for this confused crossbreed of a 1950s fitted bodice dress and a Victorian dressing gown from the 1850s. I'm using the Rafaela dress bodice from fabricstore.com, yes, the shop that has all the pretty linens, as a base. I'm altering the darts so they're curved instead of straight lines, and widening the shoulders by pivoting the original pattern to trace off the armhole shape. Next, I'm measuring one of my favorite 50s-ish dresses and using the skirt length plus my oft-used truly Victorian fan front bodice pattern to draft long front panels without a waist seam, like the dressing gown. For the back, I'm drafting circular skirt panels using double my waist measurement for the top edge so I can gather them to the bodice back. I made mock-up number 1 out of an old duvet cover and found the straight-cut front panels totally ruined the skirt's drape and twirl. So I flared both the center front and side seam lines out as far as my fabric had room for, and mock-up number 2 turned out much better. The final version will be gathered at the front waist with a tied belt. I made some final adjustments to the shoulder, and then, at the advice of my beloved Patreon supporters, cut the back neckline into a low V shape. The bodice will have a fitted lining in cotton muslin. I should have flatlined it to keep the outer side seams from floating out of place, but I didn't. The darts are marked on both pieces at once by sandwiching the fabric in transfer paper, then tracing the lines on top. This fabric's block print thankfully runs in both directions, so I can lay the big front panels out next to each other and rotate them to sew together. Fabric this pretty always needs a deep breath before cutting. The skirt pieces are laid out the same way, rotated rather than mirrored to avoid fabric waste. I've left the little triangle with the skirt's center point attached to the pattern piece, so if I need to adjust the panels to fit, I can do it easily. The bodice back pieces are small enough to cut from the scraps. I might actually have enough of this fabric left for some pajama pants. For extra skirt floof, I'm cutting 2 big rectangles of cotton lawn to gather into a built-in petticoat attached to the underbodice. And finally, these 2 long rectangles will become the belt tied round the waist. Before I put the pieces together, I'm basting the darts with a ladder stitch that will fold them for me when the thread is pulled. I'm pinning the first round of construction seams all in one go: skirt panels, underbodice fronts and backs, and the short ends of the belt. Then I got settled in for a lot of straight seams. Today's construction seam background viewing was brought to you by Skillshare, the sponsor of this video. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative, curious people with thousands of classes from SEO and marketing to drawing and painting. Their video classes are perfect for watching while I sew, so I can learn something new during the monotonous parts of dressmaking. I just finished Color Grading, an absolute beginner's crash course by Fred Trevino, and found it so helpful. Color grading seems really intimidating, but it's important for me both as a costumer who wants good photos of my projects and as someone who now makes videos professionally and didn't go to school for that. This class walks through the process step by step and makes it accessible, so it's perfect for self-taught folks. Check out the difference in this footage. The first 1,000 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Just click the link in the description. Before I sew the long seam on the belt, I'm placing a ribbon in the fold to help me turn it right side out once it's finished. Next come the shoulder seams on the underbodice and gathering stitches for the back skirt. I like to do these by sewing one row, then turning around and doing a second row continuously. It also helps to actually sew your darts rather than basting them. Now I can gather the back skirt pieces to the bodice. They'll be attached with a zigzag stitch to help support the weight. I'm also sewing the darts on the underbodice and the 2 long seams for the built-in petticoat. I don't want the gathered fluff right below the waist, so there will be a short gored piece between the petticoat and the underbodice waist. Gathering stitches are added along one edge of the petticoat and a rolled hem at the other. All that floof gets gathered down to the gored scrip, pinned and sewn in place. Then the top of the strip is attached to the underbodice. The long front bodice pieces are attached to the backs at the shoulder, and then the outer side seams can be done. But not before I add pockets. I'm marking the placement in the skirt side seams, pinning one pocket piece into each front and back panel, then pinning around the edge so I can sew in the pockets, then do the side seams around the pockets all in one. All the seams are finished with machine overcasting. Finally, the outer fabric and lining are matched up at the neckline, pinned and sewn together. Pulling on the ribbon sewn into the tie belt turns it right side out so it can be pressed flat. The dress will close with an invisible zipper sewn into the center back. I don't have an invisible zipper foot for my machine, and I've heard they're tricky anyways, so I'm setting it in by hand with a backstitch. The last construction seam is the center back skirt seam, done separately for the outer skirt and petticoat so they can move independently. The hem is turned up twice for a machine blind hem, which I failed to capture on camera. Due to my failure to flatline, I'm anchoring the bodice side seams to the lining by hand, sewing through the seam allowances with spaced back stitches. I'm also attaching the 2 layers at the armholes with felling stitches. Last, I'll close up the end of the belt and sew it on with back stitches right next to the zipper. Here we have it, a dress that looks like a sundress and feels like a dressing gown, with the fitted bodice and twirly skirt of the 1950s and the gathered front and low shoulders of a Victorian wrapper. It's comfy enough for lounging around at home, but I'm looking forward to many more hours of frolicking in the park in it too, especially when I have friends like Aura Lynn to set up the camera and pretend we know how to swing dance. Thanks for watching the construction of this Franken dress. Tell me in the comments about your favorite combination of different historical styles, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there. I'll see you in a few weeks with more of our regularly scheduled fashion history snark. Bye!